The war had lasted 3 years. 3 years of fire and blood across 100 worlds. 3 years of humanity fighting for survival against the Zorvani Empire, a race of warriors who had never known defeat in 10,000 years of conquest. But now, on the broken fields of Sereth Prime, the impossible had happened. The humans had won. Danny Cole stood at the viewport of the diplomatic shuttle, watching the Zorvani homeworld grow larger. The planet was beautiful in a harsh way, with red deserts and silver oceans and cities that rose like blades toward the sky. He was a sergeant, nothing more. A soldier who had done his job and wanted to go home, but fate had other plans for him. You understand what they expect from you? Commander Lisa Grant asked from behind him. Danny turned. His commander was a tall woman with gray streaks in her brown hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had been his mentor for 5 years, and he trusted her completely. I understand, Danny said. Their ancient law. The greatest enemy warrior gets to claim a prize from the royal family. It's meant to shame them, Lisa explained. In their culture, being chosen is the worst humiliation. Whatever you pick, you take forever. Danny felt sick at the thought. That's barbaric. That's their way. Our diplomats say we have to honor it, or the peace won't hold. The Zorvani respect strength and tradition above all else. If we refuse their custom, they'll see it as weakness. The war will start again. Danny looked back at the planet. Somewhere down there, millions of Zorvani were waiting to see what the human victor would claim. He had not asked for this honor. He had earned it by accident. Really, during the final battle, he had led a small team onto the enemy flagship. Instead of destroying it, he had captured it intact and saved thousands of lives on both sides. The Zorvani had named him the greatest warrior because he had done what none of them could imagine. He had shown mercy in the moment of victory. The shuttle descended through clouds of amber and gold. They landed in the Imperial Plaza, a vast square of black stone surrounded by towers that scraped the heavens. Thousands of Zorvani had gathered to watch. They were impressive creatures, standing 8 feet tall with skin like polished metal and eyes that burned like hot coals. They looked at Danny with a mixture of hatred, curiosity, and something else. Respect, perhaps, or fear. Danny walked alone across the plaza. He wore his dress uniform, clean and pressed, with his medals on his chest. He was not tall, not especially strong. Among the giants around him, he looked almost like a child, but he walked with his back straight and his eyes forward, and he did not show fear. Emperor Kaloth waited on a throne of bones at the far end of the plaza. He was the largest Zorvani Danny had ever seen, a mountain of muscle and armor with a crown of black iron on his head. His face showed nothing but cold contempt. Human, the Emperor said. His voice rolled like thunder across the plaza. You have defeated my fleets. You have broken my armies. By the ancient law, you may claim a prize from my house. Choose wisely, for you will live with your choice forever. Danny bowed his head slightly. I understand, Emperor. I am ready to choose. Kaloth gestured with one massive hand, and 7 figures emerged from the shadows behind the throne. The Imperial Princesses. Danny studied each one carefully. The first 6 were magnificent. They stood nearly as tall as their father, dressed in ceremonial armor that gleamed like mirrors. Their bodies were perfect examples of Zorvani strength, and their faces were beautiful in a cold, hard way. They looked at Danny with expressions ranging from disgust to calculation. One of them smiled at him, but there was no warmth in it. Only ambition. Then Danny saw the 7th princess. She stood apart from her sisters, almost hidden in their shadows. She was small, barely taller than Danny himself, with a thin frame that looked fragile compared to the warriors around her. Her skin was paler than theirs, and her eyes were different too. Softer, sadder. She wore simple robes instead of armor, and no one in the crowd seemed to notice her at all. Danny watched her for a long moment. Her sisters were busy posturing, trying to catch his eye or intimidate him. But this one, the small one, simply stood quietly and watched him back, and in her eyes, he saw something that surprised him: intelligence, kindness, a deep well of pain that she had learned to hide. And underneath all of that, a tiny spark of hope that she was trying very hard to kill. He had made his decision. "I have chosen," Danny announced. The plaza fell silent. Emperor Kaloth leaned forward on his throne. The 6 proud princesses held their breath, each hoping or fearing that she would be selected. Danny raised his hand and pointed directly at the 7th princess. "Her. I choose her." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the plaza exploded with noise. Shouts of confusion, cries of outrage, gasps of disbelief. The 6 elder princesses stared at Danny like he had lost his mind. Emperor Kaloth rose from his throne, his face twisted with fury. "Is this an insult?" the emperor roared. "You choose Lyrae? The weakest of my children? The shame of my house? She is worthless." Danny did not flinch. "She is my choice. Your law says I may claim any prize from your house. I claim her. She has no strength, no power. She is defective, broken, a mistake of birth that I have tolerated only because killing her would waste resources. Nevertheless," Danny said calmly, "she is my prize. Unless you wish to break your own ancient law in front of your entire empire." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone knew what was at stake. If Kaloth refused, he would prove that Zorvani traditions meant nothing. His own people would lose faith in him, the peace would crumble, and the war would begin again with humanity holding the moral high ground. The emperor sat back down slowly. His eyes burned with hatred, but his voice was controlled. "Take her then. Take the worthless one. May she bring you nothing but disappointment." Danny walked toward the 7th princess. Lyrae, the emperor had called her. She stared at him with wide eyes, unable to believe what was happening. No one had ever chosen her for anything. No one had ever wanted her at all. "Come with me," Danny said gently. "Please." Lyrae looked back at her father, her sisters, the court that had ignored and mocked her for her entire life. None of them moved to stop her. None of them cared enough to try. She took Danny's hand. Together, they walked across the plaza toward the waiting shuttle. Behind them, the Zorvani court buzzed with confusion and wounded pride. The emperor sat on his throne of bones and watched his most despised daughter leave with the enemy. And he felt something he had never felt before: doubt. Danny helped Lyrae into the shuttle and closed the door behind them. Through the window, they could see the crowd still staring in disbelief. "Why?" Lyrae whispered. It was the first word she had spoken. Her voice was soft and musical, nothing like the harsh tones of her people. "Why did you choose me?" Danny looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Just slightly. "Because you were the only one worth choosing." The shuttle lifted off, carrying them away from the Empire and toward an uncertain future. Neither of them knew what would come next, but for the first time in her life, Lyrae felt something she had almost forgotten how to feel: hope. The human ship was called the Constellation. It was smaller than Zorvani vessels, built for speed rather than power. Lyrae had expected to be thrown into a cell or chained in some dark corner. Instead, Danny led her to a private cabin with a soft bed, clean sheets, and a window that looked out at the stars. "This is yours," he said. "No one will bother you here. If you need anything, just ask." Lyrae stood in the middle of the room, completely lost. She did not understand what was happening. Among her people, the weak were used or discarded. Prisoners were tortured for information or forced into labor. A prize claimed in war was property, nothing more. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Danny looked at her with those strange soft eyes that humans had. "Right now? Nothing. You've been through something terrible. Rest. Eat. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here." He left her alone. Lyrae sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process this impossible situation. She had spent her entire life being told she was worthless. Her father hated her. Her sisters mocked her. The servants pitied her, which was somehow worse. And now this human, this enemy soldier, had chosen her as his prize and asked for nothing in return. It had to be a trick. It had to be. Days passed. Lyrae barely left her room at first. Meals appeared at her door, delivered by crew members who smiled at her and asked if she needed anything else. She flinched every time someone spoke to her, waiting for the cruelty to begin. It never did. Commander Lisa Grant came to visit her on the 4th day. The older woman brought tea and sat across from Lyrae with a calm, patient expression. "You're safe here," Lisa said. "I know you don't believe that yet, but it's true. Danny Cole is one of the best men I've ever known. He didn't choose you to hurt you." "Then why?" Lyrae asked. The question had been burning in her mind since the plaza. "My sisters are powerful. They would make valuable hostages, strong warriors, prestigious trophies. I am nothing." Lisa sipped her tea. "Among humans, we have a saying. Still waters run deep. It means that quiet people often have the greatest strength inside them. Danny sees things that others miss. He always has." "That makes no sense." "It will," Lisa said with a gentle smile. "Give it time." Lyrae began to venture out of her cabin. She walked the corridors of the constellation, observing everything. The humans fascinated her. They were so small, compared to Zorvani. So fragile, and yet they had won the war. They had beaten an empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds. She watched them work together, helping each other, laughing at jokes she did not understand. They treated each other as equals, regardless of strength or rank. A young engineer could speak to the captain without fear. A wounded soldier received the same care as an officer. It was completely alien to everything Lyrae knew. One evening, she found Danny in the observation deck, staring out at the passing stars. She hesitated at the door, unsure if she should approach. He turned and saw her. "Come in," he said. "The view is worth seeing." She sat beside him, keeping a careful distance. They watched the stars in silence for a while. It was not an uncomfortable silence. For the first time in her life, Lyrae felt no pressure to prove herself, no fear of punishment for saying the wrong thing. "Among my people," she said finally, "I am considered defective." Danny looked at her but did not interrupt. "I was born small, weak. My body never developed the way it should. But that is not the worst of it." She took a deep breath. "I have a gift. Or a curse, depending on who you ask. I can feel what others feel. Emotions, pain, joy, fear. When someone lies to me, I know it. When someone hides their true self, I can see through the mask." She expected Danny to look at her with disgust or pity. Instead, he looked impressed. "That sounds incredibly useful," he said. Lyrae blinked. "My people call it a weakness. A Zorvani warrior should be strong and hard, without compassion or soft feelings. My gift makes me too sensitive. I feel too much. I cannot shut out the emotions of others. That's why they treated you so badly." She nodded. "I was a constant reminder of what they wanted to hide. The fear behind their pride. The doubt behind their certainty. They hated me because I could see the truth." Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Among humans, we would consider your gift extraordinary. The ability to understand others, to know what they truly feel. That's not weakness. That's wisdom." Lyrae did not know how to respond to that. 3 days later, the constellation received a distress signal. A damaged ship was drifting near an asteroid field, its crew trapped inside. The communication systems were broken, and no one could determine if the survivors were friendly or hostile. It could be refugees. It could be pirates. It could be a trap. Commander Grant gathered her officers to discuss the situation. To everyone's surprise, she invited Lyrae to join them. "Can you help us?" Lisa asked. "Can you sense their intentions from here?" Lyrae was terrified. She had never used her gift for anything important. No one had ever asked her to. But Danny was watching her with quiet confidence, and she found that she did not want to disappoint him. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The distance was great, but emotions were powerful things. They left traces in the fabric of space itself, like ripples in water. She pushed past the static and the noise, searching for the feelings of the trapped survivors: fear, desperation, hope, the overwhelming desire to live. They are not enemies, Lee said, opening her eyes. They are refugees. Families. Children. They have been drifting for days, and they have almost lost hope. But they are not hostile. I am certain. Commander Grant made the decision instantly. Launch the rescue shuttles. Danny, take a team and bring them in. The rescue operation was a success. 43 survivors were pulled from the damaged ship, including 12 children. They wept with gratitude when they realized they were safe. One of the children, a small girl with bright eyes, walked up to Lee and hugged her leg. "Thank you," the girl said. "The nice man told us you're the one who knew we were good people." Lee felt something crack open inside her chest. She had spent her whole life being called worthless, being told that her gift was a flaw. And now, because of that gift, 43 people were alive. Because of her, children would grow up and have futures. She found Danny later, standing alone in the corridor. "Why did you choose me?" she asked again. But this time, her voice was different. Stronger. "Tell me the truth." Danny turned to face her. His expression was serious, but his eyes were kind. "I watched the ceremony carefully," he said. "I watched your sisters. They were strong and proud. But I saw cruelty in them. Ambition. Greed. They looked at me like I was a tool to be used. But when I looked at you, I saw someone different. Someone who had been pushed down her whole life, but never became hard or bitter. Someone who had every reason to hate the world, but chose to remain kind." He stepped closer. "You weren't the weakest princess, Lee. You were the strongest person in that plaza. Everyone else was just too blind to see it." Lee felt tears forming in her eyes. She had never cried in front of anyone before. Among Zorvani, tears were the ultimate sign of weakness. But Danny did not look at her with contempt. He simply handed her a cloth to dry her face. "I didn't claim you as a prize," he said gently. "I offered you a chance to live somewhere your gift is valued, a chance to be who you really are." For a long moment, Lee could not speak. Then she did something she had never done before. She smiled. "Then I accept your offer," she said. "Let us see what I can become." I'm Saud. And far behind them, growing smaller every day, the Zorvani homeworld faded into the darkness of space. The empire that had rejected her was already beginning to forget her, but Lee would make them remember. 1 year passed since Lee left her homeworld. In that time, everything changed. She lived now on Earth, in a small apartment near the diplomatic center where she worked. The humans had granted her asylum, given her protection and freedom. But she had earned her place through her own abilities. Her empathic gift, once considered a curse, had become her greatest strength. Lee worked as a diplomatic consultant, helping humanity negotiate with alien species across the galaxy. Her ability to sense emotions, to detect lies and hidden intentions, made her invaluable. Treaties that would have taken years to complete were finished in months. Conflicts that seemed impossible to resolve melted away when she helped both sides understand each other. She was respected now. Valued. For the first time in her life, people looked at her with admiration instead of contempt. And through it all, Danny was by her side. He had left the military after the war ended. He said he was tired of fighting, tired of watching good people die. Instead, he became Lee's partner in her diplomatic work, providing security and tactical advice, while she navigated the complex world of interstellar politics. They made an excellent team. His practical mind balanced her emotional intelligence. His calm strength gave her courage when she doubted herself. Somewhere along the way, their partnership became something more. It happened slowly, naturally, like the changing of seasons. Small moments added up over time. The way Danny always remembered how she liked her tea. The way Lyrae could sense his moods before he spoke a word. The long conversations they had late at night, sharing stories of their very different childhoods. The comfortable silences that needed no words to fill them. One evening, they sat together on the balcony of Lyrae's apartment, watching the sun set over the human city. The buildings glowed orange and gold, and the sky turned colors that Lyrae had never seen on her homeworld. "Do you ever miss it?" Danny asked. "Your home?" Lyrae considered the question carefully. "I miss the idea of home," she said. "The comfort of belonging somewhere. But I never truly belonged on Zorvath. I was tolerated, not welcomed, endured, not loved." She turned to look at him. "This place feels more like home than anywhere I have ever lived. And I think that is because of you." Danny reached out and took her hand. His fingers were warm against her skin, which was always slightly cool. The touch sent a wave of emotion through Lyrae's mind, and she gasped softly at its intensity. Love. Pure, and simple, and overwhelming. "I feel the same way," Danny said quietly. "I've traveled across the galaxy. I've seen wonders that most people can't imagine. But none of it matters without someone to share it with. You make everything better, Lyrae. You make me better." She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They watched the stars appear one by one as the sky grew dark. In that moment, Lyrae felt perfectly happy, but happiness, she had learned, was a fragile thing. The news came 3 days later. Commander Grant arrived at their apartment with a grim expression on her face. "Emperor Kaloth is dead," she announced. Lyrae felt the shock like a physical blow. Her father had been a cold and cruel man, but he was still her father. Still the only parent she had ever known. "How?" she whispered. "Officially, it was a sudden illness. But our intelligence suggests otherwise." Lisa's voice was heavy. "Your brother Vorath has taken the throne, and our sources believe he murdered your father to do it." Vorath. Lyrae's eldest brother, the crown prince. He had always been the cruelest of her siblings. The most ambitious. The most ruthless. She had seen the darkness in his heart, long before anyone else. She had tried to warn her father once, years ago. He had laughed at her and called her paranoid. Now he was dead, and Vorath ruled the empire. "There's more," Lisa continued. "Vorath has been rebuilding the military. He's making speeches about Zorvani glory, about avenging the defeat at Serath Prime. He's declared you a traitor, Lyrae. He says you sold your people to the enemy. He's put a death sentence on your head." Danny's grip on Lyrae's hand tightened. "He can't touch her here. Not directly, no. But we're receiving reports of Zorvani ships gathering near the border. Vorath is testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. Our analysts believe he's planning something big. Another war," Lyrae said flatly. She could feel the truth of it in Lisa's emotions. Fear masked by professionalism. Determination hiding exhaustion. Perhaps, unless we can find a way to stop it. After Lisa left, Lyrae stood at the window and stared out at the city. She had built a life here, a good life. She had found happiness, and purpose, and love. The thought of losing it all to Vorath's ambition filled her with cold rage. "I know what you're thinking," Danny said from behind her. "Do you? You're thinking about going back. Confronting him. Trying to stop the war before it starts." Lyrae turned to face him. "My brother murdered our father. He's going to start a war that will kill millions of people, human and Zorvani alike. And he's doing it all for pride. For ego. Because he cannot accept that his people lost a war. It's not your responsibility. You owe nothing to the Zorvani. They treated you like dirt your entire life. I know." Lyrae's voice was quiet but firm. "But I am the only one who can stop this. I know Vorath. I know how he thinks, what he fears, where his weaknesses are, and my gift allows me to see truths that others cannot." Danny walked to her and placed his hands on her shoulders. "If you go back, you'll be in terrible danger. Vorath wants you dead. The entire empire has been told you're a traitor. I know. I won't let you go alone. Lyrae looked up at him, surprised. Danny, you would be in even more danger than me. You're the human who humiliated them, who defeated their fleet and claimed their princess. I don't care. His voice was steady, his emotions certain. Where you go, I go. That's not negotiable. She reached up and touched his face. Through her gift, she felt his fear. Not fear for himself, but fear for her. And beneath that fear, an unshakable resolve. He meant every word. You are the strangest human I have ever met, she said. Coming from you, I'll take that as a compliment. She smiled despite herself. Then her expression grew serious. If we do this, we need a plan. We cannot simply walk into the Empire and confront Vorath. He would kill us before we said a single word. Then we'll be smart about it. We'll gather allies, find evidence of his crimes, and expose him to his own people. We'll use diplomacy and strategy instead of force. You sound like you've been thinking about this. I have, ever since I heard about your father. Danny's jaw tightened. I knew Vorath would make his move eventually. Men like him always do. Lyrae took a deep breath. The path ahead was dangerous, perhaps impossible. But she had faced impossible odds before. She had survived a lifetime of cruelty and emerged stronger. She had found love and purpose in a foreign land. She would not let Vorath destroy everything she had built. She would not let him plunge two civilizations into war for the sake of his wounded pride. Very well, she said. Let us make a plan. They worked through the night, mapping out strategies and contingencies. Commander Grant returned and offered the full support of the Human Diplomatic Corps. Messages were sent to allies. Resources were gathered. And a small team was assembled. When dawn broke over the city, Lyrae stood at the window one last time. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars, her brother sat on a stolen throne and dreamed of conquest. He thought she was weak. He thought she was worthless. He had made a terrible mistake. Danny came to stand beside her. Ready? Lyrae nodded slowly. Ready. Together, they walked out to meet their fate. The road back to the Empire would be long and dangerous. But they would face it as they faced everything else, together. The diplomatic shuttle crossed into Zorvani space under a white flag of truce. Inside, Lyrae watched her homeworld grow larger through the viewport. She had left this place believing she would never return. Now she was coming back to face her greatest enemy. Danny sat beside her, checking his equipment for the 100th time. He carried no weapons. This was a diplomatic mission, at least officially. Any sign of aggression would give Vorath the excuse he needed to start his war. Remember the plan, Commander Grant said through the communication system. You have 48 hours. After that, we'll assume you've been compromised and begin evacuation procedures. Understood, Danny replied. 48 hours. The shuttle landed in the same plaza where Danny had first chosen Lyrae. It looked different now. Banners bearing Vorath's personal symbol hung from every tower. Soldiers lined the streets, armed and watchful. The atmosphere was tense and fearful. A delegation of Zorvani officials waited at the landing site. They escorted Danny and Lyrae through the city without a word. Lyrae reached out with her gift, sensing the emotions around her. The soldiers felt uncertainty. The officials felt fear. Beneath the surface of the Empire's proud facade, cracks were already forming. Vorath received them in the throne room. He had changed since Lyrae last saw him. He was larger now, his body enhanced with military implants and genetic modifications. His face was hard and cruel, and his eyes burned with a dark fire. He wore their father's crown, but it sat uneasily on his head. The traitor returns, Vorath said. His voice echoed through the vast chamber. And she brings her human pet with her. The traitor returns his HFY. 5. Lyrae did not flinch. I come under the flag of truce, brother. To discuss peace between our peoples. Thanks for watching. Vorath laughed. It was an ugly sound. Peace? There will be no peace. The humans humiliated us. They took our pride, our honor, our dignity. And you helped them do it. I helped no one do anything. I was taken as a prize under your own ancient laws. You went willingly. Vorath slammed his fist against the throne. You smiled as you left. You were happy to betray your blood. Lyrae felt his emotions washing over her like a tide of poison. Rage. Insecurity. Fear. Yes. Fear most of all. Vorath was afraid. He had built his entire rule on promises of revenge, and now he was terrified that he could not deliver. I know what you did, Lyrae said calmly. I know how our father really died. The throne room went silent. Vorath's expression froze. You murdered him, Lyrae continued. He was planning reforms. He wanted to end the old traditions of cruelty and conquest. He saw that the war was a mistake and wanted to build a new future for our people. So you killed him and took his throne. Lies, Vorath roared. Father died of illness. Everyone knows this. Everyone believes it because you control the information, but you cannot hide the truth from me, brother. I can feel it in you right now. The guilt, the shame, the terror that someone will discover what you've done. Vorath rose from the throne. He was massive, towering over Lyrae like a mountain of muscle and metal. You dare accuse me? You, the weakest of our family? The embarrassment that father should have killed at birth? Father never considered killing me. That was your idea, wasn't it? You suggested it more than once. But he refused. Despite everything, he protected me. Lyrae's voice cracked slightly. But she pushed forward. He was not a good father. He was cold and distant and often cruel. But he was not a murderer. That distinction belongs to you alone. Vorath moved faster than seemed possible. His hand shot out and grabbed Lyrae by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Danny started forward, but a dozen guards blocked his path. I should kill you right now, Vorath hissed. End this farce and feed your body to the beasts. Lyrae struggled to breathe, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. Do it, she gasped. Kill me in front of all these witnesses. Prove to everyone that you are exactly what I say you are. Count. Vorath hesitated. Lyrae could feel his uncertainty. He wanted to kill her. Every fiber of his being screamed for her death. But some small part of him still feared the consequences. The noble houses were already restless. Killing a princess who came under a flag of truce would push them over the edge. He threw her to the ground instead. Lock them both in the detention center, he commanded. We will deal with them tomorrow. Publicly, guards dragged Danny and Lyrae away. As they were pulled through the corridors, Lyrae caught glimpses of Zorvani civilians watching from doorways and windows. Their faces were blank, but she could feel their emotions. Curiosity, hope, fear of change, and fear of staying the same. The plan was working. The detention center was cold and dark, but they were placed in the same cell. As soon as the guards left, Danny rushed to Lyrae's side. Are you hurt? Bruised, but fine. She rubbed her throat where Vorath's fingers had left marks. He's afraid, Danny. More afraid than I expected. 40, his hold on the Empire is weaker than it appears. Can you still do it? The broadcast? Lyrae nodded. The plan depended on her gift. In the throne room, she had gathered information. She had felt Vorath's emotions, seen the truth of his crimes reflected in his own mind. Now she needed to share that truth with the entire Empire. Zorvani technology included a global communication network that linked every city on the planet. If Lyrae could reach the central broadcast hub, she could use her empathic abilities in reverse. Instead of receiving emotions, she could project them. She could let every Zorvani citizen feel what she had felt: Vorath's guilt, his fear, his murderous ambition. The hub is 3 levels above us, Lyrae said. I memorized the layout from the old palace maps. If we can get out of this cell, I can reach it. Danny examined the lock on their cell door. It was electronic, controlled by a central system. Beyond his ability to break, but not beyond hers. Lyrae closed her eyes and reached out with her gift. The guard station was nearby, staffed by 2 soldiers. She touched their minds gently. Carefully, she felt their boredom, their fatigue, their quiet resentment of the extra shifts Vorath had forced them to work. One of them was thinking about his family. His daughter was sick, and he could not afford the medicine she needed. Vorath had cut funding for civilian healthcare to build more warships. Lyrae pushed a gentle suggestion into his mind. Not a command. Nothing so crude. Just a feeling. The sense that something was wrong with the cell door. That he should check it personally. The guard rose from his station. His partner looked up in confusion. I need to check something, the guard said. He walked to the cell door and peered inside. His eyes met Lyrae's. She sent another wave of emotion toward him. Trust. Empathy. The understanding that she was not his enemy. Your daughter is sick, she said softly. The guard stared at her. His hand trembled slightly. Vorath doesn't care about your daughter. He doesn't care about any of us. He only cares about power and revenge. But it doesn't have to be this way. What do you want? The guard whispered. I want to tell the truth. That's all. Will you help me? For a long moment, the guard was silent. Lyrae felt the war inside him. Fear of punishment. Fighting against hope for change. Love for his family, battling loyalty to his emperor. Then he reached down and opened the cell door. Go, he said, before I change my mind. Danny and Lyrae moved quickly through the detention center, avoiding patrols with a combination of careful timing and Lyrae's empathic awareness. They reached the broadcast hub without raising an alarm. The hub was a massive chamber filled with transmission equipment. Screens covered every wall, showing feeds from across the Empire. A single chair sat at the center, surrounded by neural interface cables. If I do this, Lyrae said, there's no going back. The entire Empire will feel what I feel. They'll know the truth about Vorath, but they'll also see into my mind. My memories. My pain. Danny took her hand. You don't have to do this alone. I'm right here. Lyrae sat in the chair and connected the neural interface to her temples. The machine hummed to life, linking her mind to the broadcast network. She closed her eyes and reached out. Far below, Vorath sensed something wrong. Alarms began to blare, but it was too late. Lyrae opened herself completely. She poured everything she had into the broadcast, every emotion she had felt from Vorath, every truth he had tried to hide. His guilt over their father's death, his fear of the humans, his contempt for his own people, and she added her own memories too. The years of abuse and mockery, the loneliness and despair, the moment when a human soldier had looked at her with kindness and offered her a chance at a new life. Across the Empire, billions of Zorvani gasped as the emotions washed over them. For the first time, they felt what their emperor truly was, and they felt what his rejected sister had always been. Vorath burst into the broadcast hub with a squad of soldiers at his back. His face was twisted with fury. Stop her, he screamed. Danny stepped between Vorath and Lyrae. He had no weapon, no armor, just his bare hands against a monster. You'll have to go through me, Danny said. Vorath smiled cruelly. Gladly. The fight was brutal. Vorath was stronger, faster, larger. He threw Danny across the room with a single blow. Danny rose and attacked again. And again. And again. He could not win. He knew that. But he didn't need to win. He just needed to buy time. Lyrae's broadcast continued. The truth spread across the planet like a wildfire. In the streets below, citizens began to gather. In the military barracks, soldiers looked at each other with new eyes. In the noble houses, lords and ladies made difficult decisions. Vorath finally grabbed Danny by the throat, just as he had grabbed Lyrae. Any last words, human? Danny coughed blood. Look behind you. Vorath turned. His own generals stood in the doorway, weapons drawn. Behind them, the soldiers who had followed him for years. Their faces were hard and cold. "We know what you did," the lead general said. "We all felt it. The Emperor is dead by your hand. You are no longer our ruler." Vorath dropped Danny and backed away. "I am your Emperor. I command you to obey." "No," the general said simply. "You don't." They moved forward together. Vorath screamed and fought, but he was just one against many. In the end, his own people brought him down. Lyrae disconnected from the broadcast hub and stumbled out of the chair. Danny caught her before she fell. "Is it over?" she whispered. Outside the window, the sun was rising over the Empire. A new day was beginning. "Yes," Danny said, holding her close. "It's over." The days after Vorath's fall were chaotic. The Empire had no clear leader, no direction. The noble houses argued among themselves, each one claiming the right to rule. Old grudges resurfaced. Ancient feuds threatened to tear the Zorvani apart from within. And through it all, Lyrae worked tirelessly to hold things together. She did not seek power. She did not make grand speeches or demand attention. She simply used her gift to help people understand each other. When two noble houses were ready to go to war over a territorial dispute, she helped them feel the fear and exhaustion of their soldiers who did not want to fight. When generals argued about military strategy, she showed them the truth of their own motivations and helped them find common ground. Word spread quickly about the small princess who could see into hearts, the one who had exposed Vorath's crimes, the one who had been rejected her entire life and returned to save her people from a tyrant. 3 weeks after the uprising, a delegation arrived at Lyrae's temporary quarters. It included the highest nobles of the Empire, the leaders of the military, and representatives from the common people. They came to offer her the throne. "You cannot be serious," Lyrae said, staring at them in disbelief. "I am the weakest of my father's children. I have no military training, no political experience, no claim to legitimacy. You are the only member of the imperial family who was not corrupted by Vorath's rule," the lead noble replied. "Your sisters fled when he took power. Some of them joined his conspiracy. None of them have the trust of the people." A military commander stepped forward. "Your broadcast changed everything. We felt your pain. We felt your strength. You showed us that the old ways of measuring worth were wrong. You showed us what true power looks like." A representative of the common people, a young woman with calloused hands, spoke next. "We want a leader who understands us, who can feel what we feel, who will not forget us when she sits on the throne." Lyrae looked at Danny, who stood silently in the corner. He gave her a small nod but said nothing. This was her choice to make. She thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The years of suffering, the cruelty of her family, the kindness of strangers, the love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning. She thought about the Zorvani people, billions of souls who had been taught to value strength and cruelty above all else. They needed someone to show them a different way. "If I accept," she said slowly, "things will change. Everything will change. I will not rule as my father did, or as Vorath tried to. I will not measure worth by physical strength. I will not reward cruelty or punish kindness. The old traditions that cause suffering will end." The delegation exchanged glances. Some of them looked uncomfortable. Others looked hopeful. "We know," the lead noble said. "That is why we came to you." Lyrae took a deep breath. "Then I accept. But not as an empress. I will take the title of first speaker. My role will be to listen, to understand, to guide. The people will have a voice in their own future. This will be a new beginning for our civilization." The delegation bowed before her. For a moment, Lyrae could not believe what was happening. Then she felt their emotions through her gift. Relief, hope, faith in a future they had not dared to imagine. The coronation ceremony was held 1 month later. It was nothing like the grand spectacles of her father's reign. Lyrae refused to wear armor or a crown of iron. Instead, she dressed in simple white robes and placed a circlet of silver leaves upon her head. The symbol of growth and renewal. Millions watched as she spoke her oath. She promised to serve her people, not to rule them, to seek peace, not war, to build bridges between worlds and species, to create a future where strength would be measured by compassion, not violence. When the ceremony ended, she stood on the balcony of the palace and looked out at the crowds below. They cheered for her. This princess they had once despised. They believed in her. She hoped she could be worthy of their belief. That evening, Dani found her alone in the garden. The palace gardens had always been her refuge as a child. The one place where she could escape from the cruelty of her family. She had spent countless hours here, hiding among the flowers and dreaming of a better life. Now that better life had come, and it was more than she had ever dared to dream. The human delegation sent their congratulations, Dani said, sitting down beside her. They're looking forward to working with you on a new peace treaty. A real peace this time, Lyrae said. Not just an end to fighting, but a true partnership between our peoples. It won't be easy. There's still a lot of hatred on both sides. I know, but hatred can be healed. Wounds can close. I have seen the worst of what my people can be. Now I want to show them the best. Thanks for watching." End quote. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the twin moons rise over the garden. The night air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of alien flowers that bloomed only in darkness. "The delegation offered me a position," Dani said finally. "Official ambassador from humanity to the Zorvani first speaker. A lot of fancy titles and responsibilities." Lyrae looked at him with concern. "Is that what you want?" "What I want is to stay with you. The title doesn't matter." He took her hand in his. "Where you go, I go. Remember?" She smiled. "I remember. But you could do anything now. You could go home, live in peace. Never think about Zorvani politics again. Home is wherever you are, Lyrae. It has been ever since that day in the plaza." Lyrae felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not try to hide them. She had learned that tears were not weakness. They were proof that she could still feel, still care, still love despite everything that had been done to her. "I never asked you properly," she said. "That day, you chose me. You said you chose the only one worth choosing. But what did you see? What made you so certain?" Dani was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he spoke. "I saw a woman standing alone among giants. I saw someone who had been beaten down her entire life but never broke. I saw kindness in a world that punished kindness. I saw strength that had nothing to do with muscles or weapons." He squeezed her hand gently. "I saw someone who deserved a chance. And I thought, if I can give her that chance, then all the fighting and dying will have meant something. That's a heavy burden to place on a stranger. You stopped being a stranger the moment you took my hand and walked away from everything you knew." Lyrae leaned her head against his shoulder. Through her gift, she felt his emotions as clearly as her own. Love, peace, a deep contentment that needed nothing else. "We have a lot of work ahead of us," she said softly. "Building a new future, healing old wounds, teaching an empire to value compassion. I know, it will take years, maybe a lifetime. Good thing we have a lifetime to give." She laughed, a light and genuine sound that surprised even herself. She had not laughed like this since she was a child. Before the world taught her that joy was a weakness to be exploited. But she was done with that old world. She was building a new one now. The moons rose higher, casting silver light across the garden. Somewhere in the city, music was playing. Children were singing. Life was continuing, as it always did, carrying everyone forward into an unknown future. Lyrae stood up and extended her hand to Dani. "Walk with me," she said. "I want to see my people. Not as a first speaker or a princess, just as myself. And to find that, just as myself." Dani took her hand and rose to his feet. "Lead the way." Together, They walked out of the garden and into the city. No guards, no ceremony, no titles. Just two people who had found each other against all odds and chosen to face the future side by side. The war was over, the tyrant was fallen, the old ways were dying, and in their place, something beautiful was being born. As they disappeared into the crowd of celebrating citizens, one of the palace servants watched them go. He was an old man who had served the imperial family for 60 years. He had seen emperors rise and fall, wars begin and end. Countless acts of cruelty committed in the name of strength, but he had never seen anything like this. A princess who chose kindness over power. A human who chose love over conquest. Two people from different worlds. Building something new together, the old servant smiled and whispered a blessing in the ancient tongue. It was a blessing that had not been spoken in centuries, reserved for moments when the world truly changed. Then he turned and went back to his duties. There was work to be done. A new era was beginning, and it started with a single choice, made by a human soldier in a crowded plaza, when he pointed to the weakest princess and said the words that would change history. Her. I choose her. Quote,